Billy Harvey.
Hey there, this is Rob Ruckus.
Hey, it's Tony from Fastball.
Hey, it's Ben McKelvey.
Hey guys, it's Matt here from the White Lakes.
What's up everybody, Jacob from The Big News.
Hey guys, it's Nick Collins here from The Effect and Better Strangers.
Check me out at Almost Famous Magazine.
Buzzing from our clips to be dropping on Almost Famous Magazine.
Check out Almost Famous Magazine.
You can find more clips from my interview with Almost Famous Magazine.
3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Almost Famous Conversations. And we got one for you today, coming to you from Cardiff, Wales. And we'll talk about why he's there pretty soon. This gentleman with me is Tim, and in the words of Mike Rutherford, the Power Howar, coming to you live from Wales. How you doing, Timmy?
I'm very good, Scott. How are you?
I'm doing good. You're in Wales, and you were mentioning earlier before we started that it's a bright sunny day. Meanwhile, I'm in Texas, and I think it's about 92. So we've got more than enough sun. I'll send some extra your way.
Yeah,
for
please.
Sure.
Well, you know what? They had a lot here, and it was just, when you come to Wales, it's the idea or it's this romantic kind of rustic, hilly mountains and, but not in sun. But when the sun shines in Wales, it's a really, really hard country to not love. It just is spectacular. It just everything looks gorgeous. And of course you've got the water as you go out to if you keep paddling, you'll probably get to Ireland, the south of Ireland. So, which is kind of nice. Or if you go the wrong way, you'll be in Maine. That's really wrong.
That takes a lot of arm strength to get to Maine.
That's like elvish, swimming.
That's some serious rowing,
right?
Hey, I know you well. I know people in the UK know you well. I want the rest of the world to get to know you. And many people don't know that you are a national treasure of Canada.
Well, I still keep waiting for you gotta call me. The thing is, what's funny about Canada is I love my country. And I do. I think it's great. It was wonderful to be born there because I was born really far north. I wasn't really born in any place that people would pick up on. And I quite like that. People got out to the wilderness, and then they made a life there. So, and I just happened to, we lost our farm and then moved to Edmonton and blah, blah, blah. And the rest is kind of history. But, I do love it. But it's funny, you being in America, I probably get hired more for American stuff than I do for Canadian stuff. And oddly enough, I felt like I never really fit because people didn't know what to do with somebody who wanted to do everything, wanted to dance, wanted to sing, wanted to do rock, wanted to act. There wasn't any place except for New York. And when I finally went to New York, they're like, oh, great, you're home. And that because I felt like home for the first time because everybody kind of went, oh yeah, you can do TV, oh you can do movies, and you can do a play, and you can do acting, you can dance if you want to. There was none of this, if you want to write songs and be a rocker, you can do that. There was no, it kind of was open because that was a big enough place where some people did that. Whereas in Canada, they're like, what do you do? Are you an actor? Or will you sing? Oh, you must be a singer. Oh, you dance. So you got to be a dancer. Well, you must be musical theater. Oh, no, you just do plays? No, you can't do that. Only actors do plays. And only musical theater do musical theater plays. And only dancers do and then, you can't be in a rock band. And then so I kind of jazz, what sing jazz, country western. So the one place that kind of took it all on, where you all became acceptable, was New York. And then and after New York, I would say going to New York, that kind of got the fires in my belly going, that I thought I could keep going with whatever I wanted to do. And if I kept doing it long enough, I knew there were some New Yorkers who might go, yeah, he's shit, but he deserves to be here. Yeah, you know what I mean? We don't like that guy, but we do like that guy.
Well, you got to earn your stripes one way or another, right? You got to.
No, man, you have to.
Going back to living kind of in the middle of nowhere in Canada, probably a very safe place, knowing Canada. You're out in the middle of nowhere. What was that spark when you were young? What age were you when you first kind of got that that urge to gravitate toward music, dance, and theater? What brought that to your life?
Oh man, like, well, I think the thing is, I come from a musical family, and I say that in a weird way because my family's all into different types of music. Like my eldest brother Peter, he was into like Al Jolson and the Rat Pack and like Sammy Davis Jr. and like those guys, Mel Torme, but mostly the Rat Pack. And because he listened to that got me into other stuff like Nat King Cole and Tony Bennett and things. But so I got that from him. Then my brother Jess, who's the second son in my family, he was into country western music, so he was into traditional country western. So, and of course, coming from Alberta, which is the Texas of Canada, there's two types of music, country and western, and it was everywhere. So that was always a backdrop. But my brother was a cool side of it. So he was, he got me to Merle Haggard and Lefty Frizzell and the Carter Family and Willie Nelson and all the heavies, and into bluegrass and things like that. So I got that from him. Then there's my sister Prairie, and she was like an Anglophile, and so she had this huge record collection when she was like from the age of 14 to the age of like 7, maybe 20. She collected tons of records, and I'm talking 300, 400 records, and they were all like The Who, Kinks, Stone, The Who, the Kinks, Rolling Stones. You had the Beatles, all the Beatles, Moody Blues, T-Rex, David Bowie, Led Zeppelin, you name it. Like it was in there. And in fact, even I think there's Pink Floyd in there, but there was a couple American ones like Steve Miller. There was like, like there's a couple of things that snuck in there, but there's, like Deep Purple. There was, Iron Butterfly. There's a lot of cool stuff. King Crimson, and so I was 7 when I inherited that record collection because she thought she was too mature to have it. Just had a kid, so she said, "Timmy, you can have my record collection." I picked it up, and I was like, I begged my mom for a turntable, and I got like a Radio Shack, like plastic thing, and it was not fit to play any of these records, but it stretched just to the edge of that. So I started listening to those albums, and I was just, as a 7-year-old, you're not really like, I was like, my favorite albums at that time were like White Album, and I used to love Help, and I used to love, Stones Painted Black, and I used to love Moody Blues, and so I'd put on, whatever I liked as a 7-year-old, Rocky Raccoon and, or the Who's Next, like there's some cool stuff going on there, but I wasn't able to get into the deeper stuff until a bit later on. And then once I went back to that, I would go back to it all the time and go, what the hell is this album? And I'd listen to like Led Zeppelin. I go, holy, my God, what was that? Or T-Rex. And I'd be like, this is, phenomenal. Or Bowie, and but then also I grew up in the 80s. So, I had all these other bands like so then I'm going to my ex-brother. So Prairie gave me the English stuff. And then my brother Donovan gave me all the electronic music, like Jean-Michel Jarre, Kraftwerk, he was into these, Vangelis and, that stuff. And the synth stuff, but not really the poppy synth stuff, but the creation of synth music. I think this poppy was the poppiest it got was like, who's the guy? Cars. Here in my car, I go.
Oh, Gary Newman.
Gary Newman. That was as poppy as it kind of got. The rest was like ambient, almost the beginnings of trance without the beat. And so I loved listening to that stuff to kind of escape, And then mine era, I was into Kate Bush, Peter Gabriel, stuff I would listen to that over and over again, and just I loved it. And then Shock the Monkey and these things, and I didn't really put 2 and 2 together that he was part of Genesis at the time. I knew Peter as Peter because he'd just broken away, and there was a big enough divide that he never mentioned it, and you'd have to know Genesis to kind of get that. And then, but all that stuff kind of bled into me. I got into the Smiths and New Order, and I got into like, kind of the alternative British side of music, plus punk rock, the Clash, and and certainly the American stuff, Dead Kennedy, 7 Seconds, the Germs and bands like that were seminal to me because I love that as a youth. When you're like 13, 14, you start to break away. You're like, I want something to be like, so I had this band called Raw Power I used to play. They're from Italy. they were like, but then that got me into like bands that were more tuneful, like the Hoodoo Gurus and Midnight Oil, and so I used to, and luckily the only way, like, we were too poor to get to buy records, so we just go to the library. We had a cool library that sometimes would pick up they just tried to pick up everything, so you could rent, you'd take these, not rent them, but you'd take them out of the library thing and sit there with your tape recorder and try and tape record all this stuff, like, and then CDs came around and we're like, oh my god, CDs, and everybody had their, we literally worshiped the box of one CD player, and then we started buying CDs. And so, I didn't have a huge collection because they were so expensive, but I mean, the couple albums I bought, like the ones I loved, the two albums I just ran out and got immediately. One of them was, well, there's three actually that changed my life. There's Split Ends, 6 Months in a Leaky Boat. I love that song, and it's fantastic. But that got me into the Finn Brothers, which is they were deep Beatles fans. So of course, I was going to love that. And then the other one was "You Better You Bet" when Kenny Jones took over as a drummer of the Who. When I was like, and I thought, and that brought the Who back for me, because it was like, this is a band I listened to on the records, and I thought I didn't really have a connection to, but then I did have a connection because they were on the radio. So I bought that album. I was on my bike, my pedal bike, and this car went by, this red car. I think it was a Trans Am, and had the windows open. That song was blaring in the car, and I turned around and I followed that car as long as I could so I could hear that song. And then I went straight and bought the album. But then what else was the other one I loved? So, and then also Silent Running. I remember I took my brother to work, because I go, at 14 you can get your learner's license, but you can't drive a car, but you can drive somebody who can drive a car. My brother was 16, so he could drive. So I drove him to his work, and Silent Running was on. I was like, I love that song. So I went next door to a record store, and I picked up, I think they had a 45 of it or something like that, I can't remember what I picked up, but I remember getting it because I loved it. And I didn't know that was Mike and the Mechanics. Like, I just went, and then that was my that was the Mechanics that I fell in love with, was that stuff. And then, of course they got big, but they were always like a band that didn't really want to promote themselves. They were like, yeah, they were kind of like the band everybody knew but didn't know.
Well, I mean, look, when back then, and we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, right?
I know.
Now, but there you go. So let's do it. So for those of you who don't know, Tim is one of the two lead vocalists in Mike and the Mechanics now. Although if the boss ends up watching this, he didn't mention that in his sister's record collection, any Genesis records. I
bet you there were. I bet you anything. I'm sure Small Creatures. I'm sure there was like I'm sure there had to be. But because there was like 300, almost 300, 400 albums. I got so deep, and I was like, these are heavy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, these are heavy albums. So, and I wish I had that collection when I left Canada. I mean, my pattern is this: when I go to a country, I go full. Like, so, I mean, when I left to America, I basically just said to all my friends, just keep my stuff, whatever you want to keep. And most of them took my stuff, like power tools or bikes or whatever. And then I moved to America. And then when I moved back to Toronto for like 6 months, I was kind of half living in New York. So I had my visa. It didn't expire for another year and a half. And then I was kind of doing shows there, trying to get stuff back in New York. And then I got a gig in London. So when I went to London, I thought, well, I'll only do 9 months. So I'll take the bare minimum. I had a friend of mine renting my place, Patricia Santilli, and so she rented my place, and then she basically inherited all my shit.
So basically what we can expect is eventually there'll be an episode of Storage Wars that they'll open it up and it'll be the Howar collection.
I don't know. I had friends of mine calling me, should I get rid of this stuff? And I was like, dude, you held on to it for that long. Get rid of it. Like, charities, and some of the stuff was really dear to me. Like, but how dear? Like, I'd rather have the story of going someplace, doing something, than holding on to things. Because I don't know anybody who dies going, but my things, they always go, I love these people. Make sure they,
Most coffins don't come with storage space. There's probably a reason why.
Right? So exactly, right? There's no, we're still digging up people who were stupid enough to make storage space for their coffins,
So let's get back to that, and we'll go down the Mechanics line for a little bit. I definitely want to hit on some other things you're working on, but you get back to what you said. You didn't know who was singing for the Mechanics, and I think going to what you said, they are one of those bands where you know the music, you don't necessarily know the band, but it sounds so familiar.
I know,
and it's so accessible that you embrace it easily. right? I mean, at that point, you had Paul Carrick, who Ace and Squeeze and had sang with Nick Lowe and you name it, right? And here comes this song, and you never know who he's really singing with, if it's him or a band.
There's another guy I love, Nick Lowe. Jesus, like God, what tunes, man, Anyway, so we're going on.
So Carrick's in the band, and he's been in so many things that you don't know that it's a new band or it's not his solo stuff. Yeah. And then it took off like a bolt of lightning. I mean, it really did. And all these years later, you guys are still going. And just, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, what was the big announcement?
We're doing a weeks tour, 2025. We got UK and Germany coming up. So,
UK and Germany.
That's gonna be really good. And fingers crossed we'll get back to America. I just think it's about finding the right promoter. The thing is that we're not young guys anymore. So, and I think Mike, not that he deserves it, but he deserves to tour nicely, And he's a class act. Mike is not. Mike would be very happy being in the bus with all the rest of us. He is. He's not one of these fussy rock star guys. He's like, my limo's coming at 12. You guys will go on the bus. He doesn't do that stuff. He goes with everybody else. When we're on a tour, he'll schlep his own luggage, and he's fantastic. And I think that's a great way to lead the band because, we just get on with it. And we have a really fun time touring. So I think that's the nucleus of all of our stuff is we actually like making music together. And I think it's, I think that was maybe at the beginning, always the reason why Mike wanted to go out and do stuff is that he loved creating. And, to create with people who like creating with him is the vibe. So yeah, and we all really get along. So
yeah. Now, are there any plans prior to hitting the road for either new material or any repackaging, anything to kind of help promote?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. It's all up to Mike. I mean, we were going to try and get another album together, but I think that was supposed to happen in February. But, time goes on. Mike went to Antarctica. He's got some family to see, and his son just got engaged, and, his other son's married, and he's got his daughter's kids who he loves and adores. And so, there's life, and I think also because of life, you get the songs, right? If you don't do life, you kind of dry up in the studio where you're like, what am I doing here? And and I think that's what happened to a lot of artists where they've dried up and went, I have to get back to my life. And they get their life back together and they enjoy it so much that 10 years goes by and then they go, I think I might do an album, but they actually have the life to draw on so they can make the album. So, that, and fingers crossed, they'll have something that's, people like. But I think Mike's one of those guys. He's hyper creative. And when he does get in the studio, things happen. So, I don't want to say watch this space because, but you just never know. He's not done. I don't think any of us are done because we just enjoy hanging out. And I think we enjoy the dynamic on stage. Almost that's more important than what happens off stage because I think what happens on stage is quite exciting because there's two lead singers and we can trade off and do BVs for each other and take a bit of the weight and you can do, fun things with the music. And we're not going outside the box. We're not really trying to recreate the wheel when we sing the songs. We're trying to pay tribute to them for the fans who've been there before, but also to keep them alive, like they're live songs. So they have to have an energy to them. And I think that energy is infectious. And I think that's what keeps us on tour for so many years and why we're going out next year.
That's great. Now, I mean, we're early. I'll tell you two things. Number one, my phone blew up and people are like, where are they playing in America? So if you guys can find another band to tour with or the right promoter, people here really do want to hear.
We were thinking about it. We were trying to get something together with a couple other bands, and bigger bands, too. And it's just about that right mix, I think, you get the right cats together, it would be a really fun tour, especially something where we could all trade the headline spot, so it's hard to find bands that you could do that with because some people are obviously hitting at a big level and they got to make all that money, but then some people are comfortable enough to tour their new stuff and their greatest hit stuff, and those are the kind of bands I think we want to be with. But if it's meant to be, it'll happen, and I would love it to happen because for one thing, I fell in love with America when I toured it. I did Les Mis there for 2.5 years, well, almost 3 years, and I drove all of America. And, I'd highly recommend if you're American or Canadian or whatever, you get in a car and before they're outlawed and go drive the country because it's worth every second in that car.
It's a great expansive space.
Yeah.
My car has the plus 100,000 miles to prove it.
Dude, why not?
I mean, what you're talking about, I mean, Squeeze and the Psychedelic Furs did that last year, where every night they just swapped. One started, one finished off the show. So if you can find someone like that, that'd be great.
Well, that's the vibe. I mean, and also that's it. Just I think guys are out there doing their stuff and who love doing it for the same reasons. And I mean, who knows if it's meant to be, it'll happen. So things come by the office all the time, and I think Tony's great with kind of knowing what's good and what's not. I mean, there's a reason why he's Tony Smith Management, why he's hit and run, because he's good at managing. He's really good at making things good for his artists, and really good at making stuff that's worth doing and worth and worth touring our stuff there. So. That's fingers crossed it'll happen. I would really like it to happen.
Fingers crossed for everybody over here who would love to see you guys.
I mean, I miss America. I really do. I love it. I love the portions of food sizes, and I think the people are amazing. All governments are crazy. Like, come on, if you want to look into it, they're all crazy. So don't judge a country solely on its government. Judge it on its people, and the people in America are amazing. So,
yeah, well. Hopefully you guys will dig deep into the repertoire. I mean, there's so many albums to choose from, so many songs.
There's a lot. Like you said, that familiarity of stuff. Whenever you listen to Par Avion, or Take It In or whatever, I'm like, geez, those songs, they just were a background song. And you're like, oh, I love that song. Who sings it? And they go, I don't know, I just love it. And they never really delve into who sings it, because they could have been, at the time, maybe a number of artists maybe could have sung that, but it was Mike and the Mechanics. So.
Well, and I will say, for not that I have any say in what's going to happen, but I think one of the first times you and I ever talked, we were talking about Taking It, and you guys sang it in Chicago, and dude, you just owned it. Like, you made it yours, man. And it's really something that
I grew up in that era, so I kind of know that style of singing, and I think you can't. And I think Mike's really particular too. He wouldn't have it if I didn't suit the song. He wouldn't say he'd sing it, So it worked out all right, And I was really happy to be able to sing like that tune. Or, I mean, it's a great gig. It's a really great gig, and it's only through being in some ways the right place at the right time, or just fluke, that I met Mike.
Well, let's talk a couple things about right place, right time. What are you doing in Cardiff? Tell everybody what you're doing in Cardiff.
I'm doing a concert for the BBC. It's a BBC show called Friday Night is Music Night. They're kind of bringing it back, so they're recording it. And it's with the National Orchestra Wales, and it's a big gig, and it'll be singing some like Broadway songs and some like, kind of old, like, not old stuff, but, kind of current, like West Side Story stuff. And then we're doing some Pascal Paul. We're doing the Dervin Hansen stuff, and then we're doing Defying Gravity and things like that. So there's a girl and myself, Juliet Crosby. She's fantastic. She's great. She's an Irish girl, and she's just a wonderful singer. And so we're gonna doing these songs together. So I love doing stuff like that, because I like storytelling songs. So I get to sing things like "Luck Be a Lady Tonight," and it's a great tune. They've got a bit of like flavor. So, and the good thing about Broadway or those styles of songs is they were written. A lot of the arrangements well, first off, they're great melodies, because they would never made it if they weren't great, because these guys were cutthroat. You think, the songwriting industry is tough. Now, they were way tougher in the 40s, But they were coming up with this stuff that was just trying to top each other. So if you have a song like, first off, it's a great melody. Then all the great singers sang it, from Sinatra to like, they all had a hand at it. And that made it a great big pop hit, but it started in Broadway. So I think we're doing stuff like that. We're doing, some Aladdin. We're doing, things that are, popular, but kind of big melodies.
Well, and I think that's something that some people, especially maybe here in the States, don't know about you. But you've been in, let's see, Chess and Phantom, and what was it, Rock of Ages? What are some of the other shows you've been in? You've had a great stage career.
I'm really lucky. I just kind of show up, and if I get the gig, I do the gig. So, yeah, I've done lots of different shows. Like I did Joseph and Miss Saigon, and then I did The Who's Tommy, and then I did Les Mis, and then I did a musical in Canada called The House of Martin Garrett. They did in Chicago, which was at the Goodman Theater there, and won a bunch of awards in Chicago as well. It's by a girl called Leslie Arden. She's a student of Stephen Sondheim. Anyway, I love that show. But I've done that, and then I kind of in the States. Then I did Rent on Broadway, and then I was in the UK. I've done On the Town, and I did Tonight's the Night, Rod Stewart musical, and then I did a whole bunch of musical review type things. And what else have I done in the UK? I did Rock of Ages, Stacey Jackson. I played, yeah, there's lots of stuff, chess, and most of these shows. I've been very privileged to be part of a giant version of them, so and that's great. And Phantom, I got to play the Phantom of the Opera for, which freaked me out. I never thought I'd be the Phantom, but somebody saw me in chess and went, come audition, and and the rest is history. So I love doing gigs, and I like storytelling, and these things happen to have those elements. They're and I think as you get moving on as an artist, you kind of go, I'd like the meteor roles, and they seem to keep coming to me. The media American roles, or even like things as kind of, not say flouncy, but I was going to say as dramatic as the Phantom. They're good. So hopefully that it's, the well's not dry and I can keep working.
Well, so let's pivot into, because you've got, and I don't fully understand this yet. I want you to enlighten myself and everyone watching today. But you're going to be in a show or a performance for this show called Undead Valley, and the way that they're describing it is an epic rock operetta musical, which is right up your alley. Slated for Broadway next year, but it's a love story between a soldier and an infected military nurse during a future zombie apocalypse.
Yeah,
I never pegged you for the zombies, but hey,
no, I play a bad guy in the show. I play a guy called Captain Paul, and he's not really. He has a turnaround at the very end, and which is kind of nice because, but he's really an affected military guy. And I met my buddy Justin, who wrote it, through another friend of mine, Aaron Lazar. And Aaron called me up and said, "Hey, they think they need a rock singer for this thing. You should, it's out there, man, but it's fun and it's good." And so I thought, yeah, man, I like new stuff. I like stuff that seems impossible, and I like doing. I've done a bunch of workshops over here, like in the UK. I did a workshop for Zorro, and at the end of the day, they cast somebody else's the role, but I was playing Zorro, and it was all the Gypsy King stuff. And when it got done, it was not like the Gypsy Kings, but when I did it, was like the Gypsy Kings. I like to sing, I can sing really pretty if I want to, but if I want to make it really raspy, and I can kind of get away with that. So I like things that stretch you as an artist, and I also like to do stuff that people think how is that going to happen? And then making it happen. And regardless of whether it's a hit or a flop, I like doing things that are a little bit risky. I don't know. I think a lot of artists might say you're nuts because you should be getting into something that would be, money making, thing, and it would increase your career. And I think your career is your career. And if you really think you're in control of your career, you're an idiot. There's a million other people in the back doing a lot of other work that you never heard about for your career. And so they're kind of more in control, aren't they? Or who's in control? And, you can be at the top and then, fall ceremoniously to the bottom and everybody tramples over you and finds the next person to. So what are you in this for? And so I had to sit myself down and say, well, I'm really in this to A, tell stories, and B, to do new work, and just to see if I can expand my repertoire and bring something to it, more than anything, bring something to it to help it get to its fruition. So and if I can help Undead Valley get to the top of the marquee, then that's my goal, and if it doesn't, well, then we'll just, as long as it keeps going, I'll keep going with it. I think there are good guys involved, and it seems insanely impossible, but everything takes shape as it goes along. Nothing leaps fully formed. And if we have to remember that Les Mis had terrible reviews, they hated it. It was one of the worst reviewed shows ever. And Sondheim has been, most of his shows ran very, very limited runs and didn't make money. And now we regard Stephen Sondheim as our greatest composer. And he should be, because he is fantastic and he's a wonderful, and he created his own kind of sound out of all these other things that were, he's able to be a voice of his own in, when people were trying to do, memes and, carousels. And even those shows are really hard to come up with now, because nobody has that wherewithal to collect it all together and do that good a show, to write 5 hits and put them in a show. It's hard. Maybe Pasek and Paul are the only guys who've kind of got that. And maybe Adam Gettle might be another guy if he can get a bit more commercial. And he probably hates hearing that. Fuck, But I think those guys have it. Certainly, I know a friend of mine over here, Richard Thomas. I keep saying for him, he's a fantastic writer. He wrote Jerry Springer the Opera and another show that I did over here called Shoes that I thought was amazing, just about shoes, the history of shoes. Which is you think, how could you do a show about that? And I was like, yes, I want to do that show. And it was great. It was a really cool show. There was some really far out music and really fun, and there was great shoes in it, man. I didn't get to wear many of them. I think there's an Oliver Peoples what I got to wear, but I mean, the girls got to wear Louboutins that were like 4,500 pounds. So that's what, like $6,000 shoes.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, you made this turn into this, zombie apocalypse, this new zombie apocalypse movie. Like, how did you research for that one? Given that correct me if I'm wrong, you've never necessarily been a zombie before,
no.
Or so how did you get into the whole mindset for a zombie piece?
So, it's mostly about the person in the back, like what's going on with the character and the disaffected, used up, sergeant, or maybe he'd be like a captain. No, he's a captain. So, he was military for a long time, then got disillusioned with the whole thing, realized why he was fighting was futile, even though he's still very much a fighter. But then he's trying to speak out against the two-facedness, but within people fighting for something isn't really worth fighting for, and that's he's got a big and I think what I liked about the music is it sounded very zombie-esque. There's some wonderful melodies in the song that I sing, but it's not necessarily the most pretty song, but it's heavy hitting, and I think the thing is I like that. I like the fact that it had a zombie feel to it. It didn't feel like a song that it didn't feel like I'd be like, oh, what a beautiful morning. I wasn't doing any of that stuff. It was like, it had these twists and turns in it that I think reflected that kind of undead quality. So I was like, I think, why not give it a shot? Help it come to life. Because we need new stuff. We need new stuff, and we need people to take risks. People, when they saw Hair, they were like, this is too much nudity on stage, and this is, and look at Hair. Hair influenced so many producers to continue producing, especially Cameron McIntosh. And if it wasn't for that musical, I don't think he'd be doing or have the same energy within him to continue on telling all the stories and all the amazing musicals that he's done. And even like people like Andrew Lloyd Webber, with Jesus Christ Superstar, yes, it was kind of a hit, but not until the movie did it really take off. I mean, it ran in these places, but that movie seemed to raise it into this iconic status where, you had legitimate rock and roll people and R&B people doing this stuff, and then telling the story of Judas and Jesus and, Mary and or Mary Magdalene. And so that was a risk. I mean, and what we forget about these great composers that revere at the high end is that they are risk takers. Phantom was, I think Andrew even admittedly, him and Hal Prince were quivering in their boots about the reviews. They had no idea whether it was going to be good or a complete failure. But, look what happened. It was giant, arguably probably the most giant of all of his projects. And he's written some amazing songs. I mean, people forget he wrote a song on an Elvis album. Andrew Lloyd Webber, on Elvis's last album, he wrote one of the tunes, him and Tim Rice. So, these guys were writing, who wouldn't refuse to write an Elvis song? But, he was kind of in and out of both businesses. He wasn't all into musical theater until he saw the variety that he can, with storytelling that he can do, and also he's incredibly gifted as a composer and as a producer and as an impresario. He actually loves it. So you need those guys at the top, and I think Justin loves this thing so much. You can't not catch on to his infectious energy when he's talking about this musical. And then also it had my friend in it, and anything to do. Like the weird thing about being in the business is that you meet these people, you go, we're great friends, like Norm Lewis or, Aaron Lazar or Adam Garcia but then we kind of finish the project and we go, whew, but we're still great friends. And we keep trying to find ways to get back together, but you can't do that because nobody's in control. So when something might happen, I leap at it, so something like Undead Valley, if Aaron's involved, I'd be like, dude, I'm in.
Well, speaking of leaping at it, for those people who can't wait until what is it, February, March of next year to hear you on the stage with Mechanics, I think I saw a post recently that you're gonna be singing in a kind of a new kind of a super group kind of thing at Isle of Wight, which is one heck of a festival. Tell everybody about that.
It is. So John Giddings, who's our booking agent, he's the head of the Isle of Wight. Like he brought it back and he's run it for every year. And then I think he sold it off to another company, but he still runs it, Anyway, he was mentioning to a friend of mine who, if you know anything about pets, if you love pets, then Google the Super Vet, and you'll find out about this guy called Noel Fitzpatrick, who I met through Mike Rutherford because we played one of his first concerts where he was trying to get people from veterinary practices and surgical practices over here to come together to talk about sharing information about, moving both forms on and being less and being more sympathetic to the animals. With a view that a lot of animals get tested on, yet they don't get the medication they're tested on. It goes to humans, and when it becomes successful, the animals still suffer. He's like that's kind of wrong, isn't it? So he was trying to say, well, I'm developing these procedures, and he is an amazing surgeon. First off, he's an amazing human being. But anyway, so what happened? Here's the band. Here's why the band came about. So John Giddings basically said to Noel, I think it was on some shindig, he said, if you get a band together, I'll put you on the Isle of Wight Festival, kind of half-handedly, And then Noel went, all right. In his last tour, I think Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath, right? And basically gave him a guitar. And then Brian May helped him teach him how to play some of the stuff on the guitar because he happens to be friends with these guys. He's helped look after their animals. And also, they all know each other. They live in a very similar area in England. And anyway, he got the bug. So he's like, came back to John. He said, John, I'm going to put a band together. And so he got a bunch of his friends who were, kind of, pro musicians. And then talked to John and said, who do you think I should get for lead singer? He said, you should ask Tim. And so he called me and said, I've got a big favor to ask. And I leapt at it because I was like, yeah, this sounds like a blast. So we're going to play the Isle of Wight. And it's mostly covers, but songs that, Noel really loved and kind of kept him going, And so, in that there's Paranoid, we've got not Back in Black. What are we singing? We're singing some AC/DC, we're singing The Killers, we're singing a Foo Fighters tune. It's a bunch of really good songs. So
epic.
when he kind of gave me the set list, although there's no U2 in it. Now I did say to him, you're Irish, because Noel Fitzpatrick is Irish. I said, this is like sin. And he's like, oh, I was humming and hawing, I should have threw some U2 in there because he's seen them 36 times. Like, I think he knows the band as well. So, anyway, maybe on the next gig, who knows? If we have a success, maybe we'll do some more gigs. I don't know. Noel's really getting good at guitar though. So I have to up my ante and learn my lyrics.
Well, I mean, now, so he's had to learn. That was quite the challenge, and he had to learn to play guitar. Now he's putting this whole thing together. One thing I like to ask of people who've had, a musical career, and this could span whether it's your rock music or something in theater. What's the hardest number you've ever had to learn, and then why was it so challenging, and what did you do to overcome that challenge? I think that's a great learning experience for other people.
I think. Okay, they're all kind of challenging because I'm scared beyond belief before I get on stage. I don't think people notice this. I always have a moment of like, oh my God, even with the Mechanics. It doesn't matter if it's 8 people or 80,000 people. I always have that kind of, where I have to do a little bit of a prayer or something like that to get myself in the zone. And then I have this foolhardy take on it. Well, what's the worst that could happen? So just go out. And so that seems to, that energy seems to keep, I've been comfortable with that enough that I'll just go now. But I mean, it was hard at first, to get, but I think some of the things that I think were really hard, I think the emotional content of Chess was really hard because he's an abandoned kid and he's trapped in this this really chess genius kind of mind, and he's got this rock and roll persona, but behind it is this wounded individual who's not done any work on the reason why he's fought so hard or struggled or tried to, he's never made peace with it all. So when you have those types of characters, and the Phantom as well was hard because it's a bit low for me as it sounds funny to say, but it's a bit lower register for me. So it was about allowing myself to become relaxed enough so that my vocal cords could get there, and also finding what I need to do physically before you sit in a chair for an hour and a half to 2 hours getting your makeup done, which is very relaxing, but not good for theater. You're like, oh, I gotta go on. You can't do that. So I had to really up my physical activity before the show, so that my body kept going, and so my voice wouldn't fall into this like zone. And also, I think that it was funny that when the memo I got from Andrews, that he really wanted me to sing it more rocky, but then when I got into the rehearsals, our resident musical director said I wanted it to be all really classical. So here I was changing genres immediately, and luckily, I grew up singing classical music, and people know I was in boys choir for years, and I fell in love with that. As much as I love rock, I love classical music, and I think I love them all if it's done well, or even badly. Some of these rock Zarathrustras that are on the web of, like, high school bands playing, I'll listen to that just to give me a lift up because it's so horrible. It's great, But anyway, so I got into classical music, and I think that's led me. It's been, I guess in some ways people can't quantify me. What do you do? And people, because I started in the UK mostly as a rock singer, people think of me in that vein. And then when they hear me sing something like Phantom or On the Town, they go, "Oh my God, I never knew you could sing like that." But they don't know that when I started out, I did start mostly singing legit stuff, and maybe more Broadway style. But that I grew up, not saying I grew out of that, because I'm still immersed in it. I still love it. But I think, when you listen to somebody like Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, or you listen to somebody like Shab Mahi, then you hear these singers who are singing unlike anything you've ever heard, and it's fantastic. It makes you want to do that, and that's the same way it was with me in R&B. Like, I remember when I was a kid, I remember seeing Soul Train, and like, what was the other stuff? I used to, and my family would all be outside and everything, and I'd be dancing downstairs in my, rec room, trying to copy the moves and listening to R&B on the because I just thought it was great. I didn't know he called it R&B. I just thought these people dance amazing and they sing amazing. I want to do that. So I never went, I can't do that. I just loved it. And I think if you put that energy into it, you'll have a lot more success with trying on that style, rather than going, I've got to really study R&B. I've got to learn these licks, I have to go over Donny Hathaway's licks and just, nail them. And it gets mechanical, whereas I think the joy is where the real artist is. And you can hear it in pretty much every great artist, from Tom Waits through to like Aaron Neville. They're singing out of their pure joy of singing. Even Neil Young or Joni Mitchell, whoever, they're singing because they're telling a story and they love it. And so that kind of got me going. And I think, it makes me hard to quantify as an artist because I like to try on many hats, but I think that's my secret weapon.
Yeah. Well, speaking of secret weapons and things that you've worked on, I know.
Here's my machete.
What is your zombie weapon of choice? What is your zombie weapon of choice? And God forbid your mates became zombies. Would you fire upon them? I mean, there's a lot of questions you had to answer.
No, I think we'd have to find some victims.
What would you do if Luke Juby became a zombie?
I'll try and cure him. He's such a good dude, man. He deserves, of all the mechanics, he deserves to be cured first. He's a great keyboard player and like such an amazing, like, humble guy, but super talented. Like, I mean, this dude can put his hand to anything. He's an incredible producer, great singer. He's got a face like a sack of nails, which means no, he doesn't. He's a really good looking guy. He's kind. I mean, it's like if I wanted to pop out the perfect kid, it'd be Luke, and he's a dude, man. He's not like just this, look at him, I'm trying to get him dates or something like that. But no, I'm not. I really think highly of all of our band members. I think they're all incredible for whatever they do. And, I think that's not saying it's rare, but I think in a band, when you get together for we're on like 13th or 14th year of mechanics, I still look forward to hearing these guys play because it's always exciting. Between Roachford or Anthony Drennan or Gary Wallace or Nick when he was on drums, or these guys, they've got that bug, they've got that creative juice, and they got that love for the vibe, and they're, and killing it. Mike certainly has it in spades. He's a wicked bass player, Mike Rutherford. He's very groovy, and you think, here's an English guy who went to a public school, let's say a private school, but the man's he's got bass chops, and that's, I think that's somewhat unexpected. It shocks me sometimes. I look over and I go, God, he's really good at the bass, and I think I better start singing.
There is that rumor that he had that other band to learn that stuff in.
Oh yeah, like listen, who hasn't been affected by Genesis? Now, when I went back into all of it, my jaw dropped, because it's some of the most creative, and it's progressive, isn't it? Prog music, but it wasn't just prog. It morphed into this super tight unit. When Peter left, they started creating really poppy and very acerbic slightly. The wit was very and the content wasn't, it was very Genesis content, but the shell of it was accessible, and of course that took off. Like, it took off, and they should have. They got their their time in the sun, and they earned every second of it, because Genesis, when they first started, if you listen to some of the stories, it wasn't always a guaranteed thing, but they stuck with it, and there's only one Genesis, isn't there? They were fantastic. It's weird to say that, having seen their last tour and knowing a lot of the guys in the band, and hanging out with, it's hard to think, are they really done? And I think they're not done making, but maybe they're done performing.
Time will tell. Let's talk about making music. Yeah. Let's talk about making music for a minute. Like I said, you've posted a couple of times about this, and it's been a little while. But there was a point you were being super creative, and you're working on a solo album.
I'm still trying to get that done.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's still going, and I've got to try and get it out before February of next year. So, it's weird. When I came off the tour, I went straight back into being a stay-at-home dad, and then doing the odd bit of a gig here and there. I went and did a gig for friends of mine for a new musical based on Beethoven they were writing in Germany. Instead of playing in Korea now, and it's huge. It's a big thing. But I got to do little things like that. But my number one thing was I spent 6 months away from my son. So I was gone as of January 1st till June 10th. I wasn't even in the house. I was doing the Phantom in Greece, and then I came back to do a couple concerts in Ireland, and then I went straight back to do more Phantom in Greece. Then I came straight back 3 days to wash my clothes, and right back in the Mechanics tour. And then I finished the Mechanics tour and came home. So I've really been enjoying time with my family and with my son and with my daughters, and seeing them as much as I can. As much as, they're off. My daughters are older now, so they're off doing their own things, and I love that. I love that they're living their lives and having experiences and learning about what it is to be a young adult, and to pursue their careers. And they're doing great in it, both of them. And we see each other as much as we can, and that's, I love that. But when you have a 6-year-old, he predominantly takes a lot of your time, just like they did when they were that age. So just hanging out with my son has been, that's been great. But then also the other people I was writing the album with, they all got busy doing other things too. So to bring everybody back, that's been a bit complicated. So I think that was put on hold. But now I'm actually talking to Luke about getting together and just banging out all the tunes and getting them produced up. And I think what's hard is, I think that I want to do the songs like they're singles. I don't want to make them like they're one part of a whole album. I want to hear them all together at the end and go, this song, and then hear whatever that makes. So because if I want to sing something more like Sean Colvin or Jackson Browne, I want to do that song that justice. But if I want to do something that's more like Radiohead meets kind of like, it could be anything like The Damned or something, it could be something that crazy, a bit more ghouly, then I want to go that direction. And if there's something that sounds like the Kinks or sounds like the Who, I want to go that direction. So I don't want it to be like this. The only constant would be me singing it, or doing a duet or something. Or if there's something like a Peter Gabriel song, I want to do that justice. Not to make it a pastiche of something, but to use the elements that made me go, and put that song in that vernacular.
Well, yeah, and it's not uncommon. I mean, we consume music differently these days. I mean, you look at what Nick Collins' Better Strangers they've only had singles, right? They put out songs, and then the whole idea behind his current gig, The Effect, yeah. They put some songs together, and lo and behold, there was going to be an album, but they got it together and they've been releasing singles. So you got to look at how people are going to consume it to get the most bang for your buck, so to say, both from
and then go tour it, man. You might write songs on tour, like you might. That's it. Like I think some of the mechanic stuff. Remember, we were in Leipzig and we recorded like some stuff, just demo-y type stuff in Mike's hotel room, and there's like a tram going outside and there's people walking around and we're like, but I think some of those things made the album, like some of the tracks on there, because they were just so kind of, they had the magic in it. So yeah, music is consumed differently, and I think it is I'm very lucky in that when I go tour, we can make, we have a built-in kind of audience. You can't take it for granted because you have to put on a great show, because otherwise they're not going to come back. And I'm very lucky to be involved in that kind of a band, because if I was a young band, it's very hard. And I toured for 8 years with my own band in London, playing every armpit known to man. And I think in some ways earned my stripes by doing that. But, when we didn't sell enough albums and we kind of ceremoniously left the record company, and they, let us go, we were the only artist on the album because it was kind of a purpose-built thing. But when that happened, it was hard to swallow all that stuff and go, well, what now? Have I done the rock? Is it over? Do I have to give up on that dream? And I didn't give up. I luckily fell in with my friend Brian, who introduced me to Mike, and just kept songwriting because I had the opportunity to try and write songs for other people. I thought, why not? Why not?
Well, there you have it, everybody. You're going to have, all of you Tim Howar fans are going to have to hold his feet to the fire. Make sure that if you're hitting him up on socials, remind him he wants to get this done by February.
Solo album, yeah. And I might have some special friends on there because I've got a duet I want to do, and it's been one of those things that's kind of got that Peter Gabriel and Kate Bush type vibe to it, and and that's I've always heard it that way. And so I think it needs to be done that way. But to find the female vocalist, it's I don't know, whatever happens on the day, you just never know. So whoever floats my boat, and if I get the song finished and done the right way I want to do it, well then I've got a bunch of great people I can call, and I'm very lucky that I have so many friends in the musical theater business who also do kind of crossover stuff. They're not just musical theater singers; they're really good pop singers, they're good rock singers, and I think they've had to do that because of the jukebox musicals coming up, And some of them, I think the only way they can be successful is if they have that essence of rock, or that of the original artist in them, and if they have that essence, then they tend to make the fans of the musicals happy, as well as the existing fans from their own work. So that's why there seems to be a lot more people who can put on those hats these days than there was maybe in the 80s. You'd have people who could only sing like legit, whereas now they can go, no, I got a bit of rock in me, and they're actually good at it, or they got a bit of R&B and they're really good at it. So, so I hope that the album might appeal, that my solo album might appeal to some of those people as much as it would appeal to the Genesis fans. I wouldn't want to let them down. I don't want to dumb anything down because I want it all to sound the same. I want it to all, each song stand on their own, and that's, fingers crossed it'll be a good album.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I know you've been putting a lot of energy and effort into it.
Yeah, I have. It's also a lot of letting go. I like writing with other people because there's a security in that. It doesn't have to be just me, but this is just me, and not really. Like I said before, that's the ego saying it's just me. The reality is it's a whole bunch of other people, and maybe you might show up to do a couple of verses.
Right. If you get Luke involved, I'm confident it's going to be great. He is doing
first off, I love
work.
The guy like crazy, and he's a dude, man. He's an incredible creator, and I'd be lucky to have him. So we've been talking, and so fingers crossed that'll work out.
Awesome.
There's a lot of fingers crossed going in this conversation, isn't there?
There is, but you know what? You always got to have hope.
A bit more.
You always have to have hope. I always like to kind of, as we get to the end of our conversation, I think it's really cool to talk a little bit about who are some of the artists, top 2, 3, 4 artists that you're listening to right now. They're your little bit of earworm, either a song or an artist, and why, so that we can kind of spread some of that, some of those interests.
I go back to it over and over again. My daughter introduced me to a band called the Fickle Friends from Brighton, and I really love them. They're very 80s sounding, not 80s, but they've really updated. They've got some great songs. They're yeah, great songs. And there's a couple little swear words in there that can make it kind of, current. I think, I think it's just the way kids are, and not kids, I say they're kids, but it's cool. It's kind of cool to say, I'm just, they don't have to dumb it down. They don't have to write a different word. That they can say this, what they actually want to say. So there's some great songs of Fickle Friends. I really love that. I was listening to an old band called the Toms, which is, who's the artist? I might have to even Google it right now. But the Toms is a song called Other Boys. And I was listening to a lot of Outkast, hey, because I love Andre 3000. And I just like, but there's that one song that reminded me a lot of, first off, I love the Velvet Underground, right? But that had, that was also, that got the seal of approval from Lou Reed, right? And people don't know, he thought that was a perfect pop song. And for Lou Reed to say that, it meant a lot. But then I heard the Toms, Other Boys do, and Other Boys. And I swear to God, Andre 3000 must have been listening to that song, because it's got this, it's not, I listened to them back to back and I thought, no, they're too different. But there's something about the other, and it was written by the artist. Basically he just wanted to do a solo album, so he played every instrument himself and sang it. So everything on the Toms album, and it's one of those albums that when it was released, they had like 5,000 copies and they went out to everybody, and then everybody forgot about it because it never hit anything. But then everybody went, this is a great album. So it became a real sought after collector's album. So if you have that original album, it's worth a lot. But then they've just reissued it, but it's on Spotify if you want to find it. But I listen to that and I just go, this is a tune. It's so good. It's so good. It's just basic rock and roll and fun and a bit out there, a bit like Pixies, a bit like, Frank Black, but still slightly mechanical. Anyway, I love that. And then, my buddy Andrew Roachford, I got to say Roachford. First off, the guy's like Stevie Wonder with sight. And I hate to say that because that sounds like I'm dissing Stevie Wonder. But, he's just one of the most brilliant piano players and creators. And he's the other lead singer, Mike and the Mechanics. And I get to hear this guy sing every night, right? And you'd think I get sick of it. But I don't. Not one moment. It's just like, he's a great, great artist. And he's been around for a while, over here. But he's never had that massive breakthrough success. Well, he has with Cuddly Toy. He had that a lot. And then the record companies kind of swamped everything up, and it just became, I think for him, the 80s and 90s were, a great time and a bad time because there were so many artists coming out and it was so all over the place, that you kind of get lost in a 7-album deal. Even that's an amazing deal to get, that he got his original deal with Sony. But he deserves his time in the sun. That man is so talented and he's also one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. Like, he's just one of the nicest guys, one of the coolest cats. I look forward to every time I hang out with him. He's the godparent for my son, and he's just incredibly talented. So, speaking of the wife, let me just hang up on her right now. So anybody who's listening and watching this, if your wife calls you and you hang up on them and it's recorded for Scott, you're in the doghouse. Okay. So I am officially in the doghouse, Ow!
We're gonna want to keep you there. Look, we're gonna wrap things up, but I will say, and not a lot of people know this, but since we're gonna put this out there on the internet, and I've been a big proponent, given that you are a treasure from Canada, if anybody, the Tim Hortons are now in the UK.
Listen,
so you've got
go back and listen to Tom Cochran. Go back and listen to Bryan Adams and Jim Valance. Go back and listen to these guys. Go back and listen to Sheriff and Alias, and go back and hear these bands that came from Loverboy. Listen to them, and I defy you to sing like them. That's the reason why I thought I wouldn't be a rock singer, because these guys, April Wine, or even like the Guess Who, or Larry Gowan, these guys had these voices, and I was like, I can't sing like that. I can't, But then I was too young, But I mean, I was profoundly influenced by the Canadian music, and Tragically Hip. You can't not mention them because they're just the coolest. First off, nobody knew them in the States, and they never really broke the States, but nobody cared because they could fill stadiums like 70,000 stadium. It's like kind of like there's another band that I know called the Springbok New Girls from my buddy Arno was the lead singer of that. And in South Africa, they'd sell like stadiums, And then when I met Arno, we were playing like a shitty little club in London, and I was like, people don't know how giant you are, He's like, well, you got to cut. You have to try your hand at the big place, and
Well, as I was getting. So let's just get this plug in, because I think this could be a real career
this is our plumbing moment. There comes the plug.
Look, there are Tim Hortons now in the UK, so you get a little bit of that home taste when you're in the UK. But if anybody who may be watching in Canada, from the Hawkins Cheezies company, this is your biggest fan.
Listen,
and if you're going to expand it,
I would almost sell my child for you. You've been the backdrop of all my youth, And actually, I did a Tim Hortons commercial. I was the counter guy at a Tim Hortons commercial when I lived in Toronto. I shot a commercial for them, and they were so nice. They gave me like 2 giant pallets of coffee. They didn't have to do that. I had Tim Hortons coffee for like a year, and I was like so happy because I love coffee.
Because you're not amped up enough as it is.
Oh, Tim Hortons, let's make some more coffee spoons in there. But I drank all of it. And, I drank all that coffee, and it was great to do it, but to do those things I'm so lucky. I've done so many lovely things, because I think the thing is I just was fearless to move somewhere else and start over again. So, I got to sing at Maple Leaf Gardens with, sing the anthem. I got to sing for the Blue Jays. I got to sing for like the Raptors. I got to sing for, the Argos. I got to sing for the Edmonton Oilers. Like, I'm so lucky to be an anthem guy. And that made me just as happy as being the Phantom. And I'm probably more scared doing the anthem for like a Detroit Red Wings, hockey, than I was like going out and doing like a gig with Rod Stewart. I was like, this is incredible, because they're also superstars in a different vernacular. These guys and men and women who go play professional sports are unbelievable, and they get very little credit for the enormous amount of work it takes to become that. And in some ways, that's kind of, I love this interview, because it's, I must sound like a ADHD, squirrel or something, but there's a lot of stuff that I've really enjoyed. And I think the thing is, the reason why the Undead Valleys come out of here, the reason why Chess comes out, it's because I enjoy doing the new crazy stuff. And if it needs a rock singer, or it needs somebody to sing legit, I would give my hand to it, and hopefully make some new friends from it. Like, we met in Chicago, and we've been friends for what now, 10 years? What? Like, is it 10 years
like
now?
That. It's been a while.
It's crazy, man. I know your mom. I know his mom. Like, this is like, so that's it. So.
Yeah. No, this has been great. And like I said, Hawkins Cheezies, your new spokesperson, get him a couple cases, because
my nieces send me over cases. Scott sent me cases. It's wrong, but they're so right. And I don't think, like, they have a product over here called Twiglets that everybody drinks in the it has. It's kind of like a Marmite flavored or Vegemite or flavored stick. Hawkins are like the cheese version of that, because they've never changed. They're remaining true to that formula. Don't ever change Hawkins if you're doing it, because it's working. And people like me will scour the world for Hawkins Cheezies. And when I come back to Canada, I buy vast amounts and take them back with me, So isn't that hard,
Well, the bad news is I recently had to change suitcases, so the next trip over I've got less room for Hawkins. So we got to get Hawkins to ship you boxes for sure. So, and I'll definitely, by next year, I'll be seeing you in person, buddy. This has been a great hang. Really appreciate it. We've covered a lot of ground. Truly appreciate you spending time with everybody here at Almost Famous Magazine. If you have questions for Tim, throw them down below. Please follow. We've got a lot of great additional conversations coming up, and we hope to see you again soon, Timmy. All the best.
Anytime for you. Anytime. I mean it.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. You be good.
Peace out.